Echoing through the misty corridors of history is the most ancient question of our origins. Who are we, and where did we come from? At the very heart of this mystery stands an enigmatic figure, shared across the sacred texts of the great Abrahamic faiths, Adam. For generations, we have been taught that he was a single historical individual, the sole ancestor of us all. But what if that is merely the surface? What if the word Adam has lost its true meaning over thousands of years? What if we have reduced a profound concept into the simple name of a first man? And because of this, are we missing a much deeper truth? Today, together, we will descend into the origins of the word Adam and uncover the essence of what it truly represents. And most likely, your perception of this name is about to change forever. Because today, we are not speaking of a single man. We are speaking of humanity. Welcome to Secret History. The story that has been told for hundreds of years is quite simple. God decides to create humans as his vicegerents on earth. The Quran recounts the creation of humanity in a rooted manner through several different narratives. In some verses, man is created from clay, in others from water, and in others from a drop of fluid. You see similar narratives in other Abrahamic religions, and you find the oldest roots of this story in even more ancient civilizations, like Sumer in India. But the common point never changes. The word we know today as Adam always comes around and confronts you in one way or another. In this video, we will not question the existence or non-existence of this religious concept. After all, there is the reality of humanity, so it must have an origin, right? Whether you believe, based on religions or myths, that God or the gods, as in some narratives, created humans, or whether you believe everything developed by chance, evolutionary leaps occurred, and humans emerged. Or perhaps you combine the two and make your decision. That is your personal choice. But as I said, that is not today's topic. Today, together, we will investigate the depth behind this intertwined story, which is usually told simply nowadays, and especially the depth behind the word itself. Because if you love history like I do, that is where the real excitement begins. When we hear the name Adam, we usually think of a single person, the first human. But what if Adam is actually a symbol representing the entire human species, rather than just a single individual? Our journey begins with this very question. The origin of the word Adam already starts giving us clues. In Hebrew, Adam means human, and quite often it is used to express the entire human species, rather than just one person. In Genesis, the first part of the Torah, when God creates humans, the word Adam is used for the human species without distinction between male and female. For example, in Genesis 1:27, when it says, God created man in his own image, male and female he created them. The original Hebrew text uses the word Adam for man, and this denotes humanity as a whole. It is not separated into man and woman as it often appears in translations. Furthermore, the Torah later states, God blessed them and named them Adam on the day they were created. Here too, Adam is used as a name for humanity, encompassing both male and female. Therefore, right from the very beginning, the term Adam appears more like the name of a species than a proper name. In fact, an evaluation in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica emphasized that using the name Adam as a proper name was an early error, and that the word Adam actually indicated the human species. The clues regarding the word Adam in Hebrew are not limited to this. The word is connected to Adamah, meaning soil or earth. In Genesis 2:7, it is said that God formed Adam from the dust of the ground. Here there is a wordplay connecting Adamah, the soil, and Adam, the human. In other words, Adam's name becomes identified with the soil itself, with the earth. This appears before us as an indication that Adam, beyond being an individual, ontologically represents earthly humanity. That is, a species directly belonging to this planet. When we come to Arabic, we encounter the same word. The name Adam likely passed directly in Arabic as a loanword from Hebrew, and in a similar fashion, it is associated with the color of the soil or the earth's surface. Some Islamic scholars relate the word Adam to Adam, earth soil, or Adamul Arz, the surface of the earth. This is an approach that overlaps with the belief that humans were created from soil. There is even a narration that God created Adam from a clay collected from soils of different colors on the earth. It is explained that this is why humanity possesses various colors like black, white, and red. Remember, we are not conducting a scientific analysis here. Here we are on an etymological history journey. As it can be seen, linguistically, Adam appears before us as the concept of the human coming from the ground, from the soil, rather than the name of a specific person. In other words, the idea of the earthly human has been processed within the etymology of the name throughout the ages. Let us go back even further and examine the first civilizations of the region. When we look at Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian myths, the word we know as Adam generally appears before us as Adapa and Adamu. And here, there is a beautiful distinction. When talking about humanity in myths, we generally see the term Adamu. And Adamu, as an exact translation, carries the meaning of created species. In other words, according to those beliefs, since the gods created us to serve them in their daily tasks, they saw fit to call us Adamu, meaning the created species. Adapa, on the other hand, describes the first wise human chosen specifically from within this species, selected by Enki, who designed us according to the myths and with whom divine wisdom was shared. So Adapa is likely a proper name, but it is not the origin of the word Adam. The origin of the word Adam leads to Adamu. For instance, after the discovery of the Sumerian king list, researcher Jean Bottero caught this distinction beautifully. He explained that Adapa, who is listed as the first human king, was a priest king, and that he ruled in the city of Eridu for thousands of years. The Adapa and Adamu examples I just gave are seen more in post-Sumerian Akkad and Babylon, because in Sumer, a different root word actually appears for this species. Namlu. Translated exactly, it means the human species created from mud, from clay. Surprising, isn't it? I wanted to emphasize this root meaning of the word to this extent right at the beginning of the video, because now we are going to discuss the stories and narratives found in the books of the Abrahamic religions. And this time, consider the word not as Adam, the single person we are told about, but as I mentioned just now, as a word representing complete humanity. Because thanks to that, the event will start going to very different places, and the deeper meanings in the books will begin to appear before us. When we examine the books of the Abrahamic religions in order, we actually see that different narratives of Adam appear before us. And here, historically, I think a delightful nuance lies. Let us begin with the Torah. The book of Genesis, the foundational text of Judaism, presents the story of Adam through two distinct and at first glance seemingly contradictory narratives. There is an interesting reason for this structural duality. When we look at Genesis chapter 1, a majestic and orderly process of creation is described in this section. The divine entity referred to as Elohim, which is actually a plural creative form, and although usually translated as God, it is sometimes used by Jewish rabbinic tradition to refer to a divine assembly composed of angels. Even their children, called Bene Elohim, find a place for themselves in the Torah. Yes, there is no need to soften it by calling them angels or anything, because when you delve deeper into the subject, the story of the Sumerian Anunnaki gods confronts you. This very group called Elohim, which describes a collective to us rather than a single God in essence, declares in the Torah that they created humanity in their own image. And the verse in the book says, "He created them male and female." So here the narrative that Adam was created first, then Eve was created from his rib, does not appear before us initially. The creation of male and female as a species is described. In Genesis chapter 2, however, the narrative takes on a more cinematic and earth-focused tone. A singular Lord God, referred to by the name Yahweh, appears before us. He shapes a single man from the soil, breathes the breath of life into him, and later creates a woman from his side, usually translated as a rib. This is an individual and gradual creation story, and this is essentially the story we all know. Those expulsions from paradise, dramatic events, and so on, all begin to appear before us in this section. And as the main protagonists, we encounter Adam, used to express a man, and Eve, used to express a woman. Now, when you ask, why are there two different creation narratives here? That is where we face the usual biggest problem: human intervention. Today, this difference in creation, and even the difference in the Creator God, is a subject debated among Jews. And the primary reason for this is the fundamental differences between the Yahwist and priestly sources within Judaism. If you ask, what on earth is that? One is the approach that wrote the Torah with information from the Babylonian captivity, and the other is the Torah approach written by the tribe of Judah that seized power after the Persian period. And these two differences create such huge problems that if any of you have read the Torah, you must have noticed this. And this problem peaks especially in the creation narrative of humans, as you have just seen. In fact, theologian John Walton, drawing attention to usage differences in the Hebrew text, says this: in Hebrew, the definite article, that is, the prefix h, is not used with proper names. If the prefix h is present, this does not denote a proper name, but a species or a collective. So, according to this approach, we see that in the original approach as well, the word Adam was used as a species. But over time, this story started to be presented to the Jews by giving it individual meanings. Perhaps one of the verses that best shows that this essence is actually the species is the sentence in Genesis 5:2. God named them Adam, that is human, on the day they were created. It is when we set out from here that we see the story of Cain and Abel begin to change. Because in the normal classic narrative, Adam and Eve descend to earth, they breed and multiply, and somehow all of humanity multiplies from two people. Whereas normally in such a consanguineous marriage, a species called humanity scientifically should not exist right now. Because we are talking about an event that is impossible according to the nature of things, and logic disappears. However, if we handle the event with the essential core meaning of the word, which is humanity, the story settles into a logical framework, and the story of Cain and Abel transforms from a story of two brothers killing each other into the story of two different communities. According to the Torah, Adam's son Cain, that is Kabil, after killing his brother Abel, is exiled by God to the land of Nod. And again in the Torah it is said, there Cain knew his wife, that is, he married. According to that most basic and, in my opinion, shallow narrative, there are already only 4 people on earth and 1 dies. Then who is Cain's wife, whom he finds and marries in the place he was exiled to? Furthermore, the verse continues like this. Cain fears the people who might kill him in the place he goes to, and God puts a mark on him to protect him. Moreover, Cain even builds a city there. Now, even a single verse contains contradictions from top to bottom according to the classical approach, doesn't it? But if we handle this not as an individual but as a species, that contradiction ends. Instead of the approach that there were 4 people on earth, Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, if we take Adam as the species and the others as communities, the pieces fall into place, and the narrative you will see both in the Torah and shortly in the Quran gains meaning in a logical way. In summary, these problems appear before us because the Torah has been revised repeatedly in the hands of Jews, and even in the hands of different Jewish sects. But if we remain faithful to the original narrative and symbolism, we can at least grasp the main theme behind a massive confusion of information. Namely, the reality that Adam is not the name of a single person, but of complete humanity. Let us come to the Quran and Islam. When examining such subtopics in the Quran, my advice to you is to examine the verses according to the order of revelation, to better understand the chronological timeline and the change. For instance, this difference appears as an important detail here as well, because if we approach the event according to normal translations, the word Adam first appears in Surah Al-Baqarah with a meaning describing an individual rather than a species. Whereas when we look according to the order of revelation, it appears before us in Surah Al-A'raf as follows. We created you, then we fashioned you, then we said to the angels, prostrate yourselves before Adam. So they prostrated themselves, except for Iblis. He was not among those who prostrated. Here what creates the difference in the event is the word Adam in Arabic. Normally before the Quran and during the period it was revealed, Adam was not a word used as a proper name in that region. As an Arabic root, it appears as a word carrying meanings like a dime, that is the earth's surface, the earth, or a being created from the earth. And now read the verse again with this essential root meaning. In the Quran, it is stated in a plural form, we created you. Here, according to some approaches, some translate it as God referring to himself in the third person plural, the royal we. Or since Gabriel conveyed the message, some say that when saying we, he is referring to a group in the style of a council of angels that he himself is also included in, just like that plural Elohim example in the Torah. The approach on this matter is up to you now. In Surah Al-A'raf, another verse appears that gives us information by saying, O children of Adam. This appears very appropriately as the Arabic equivalent of the time for the word humankind, which we use to define our own species today. Let us continue to go deeper. Many Muslims keep thinking that a woman named Eve is mentioned as Adam's spouse in the Quran. They even thoroughly adopt her, calling her Mother Eve and so on. However, the word Eve does not occur in the Quran. The expression Adam's wife does not occur either. Eve is a completely Hebrew origin word, and actually, even among them, Its meaning is divided in two. In Hebrew, Eve is a word carrying the meanings of life giver, the one who gives life. And according to the Torah, the Lord God does not give her this name. In the Torah, when God sees Adam alone, he creates an Isha for him from his rib. That is, he creates a woman as the literal meaning of the word. Here again, when we handle it, essentially it talks about the creation of the female of humanity. That is, if we handle it in the form of our subject, the male and female of the species are created. And because the female is productive and gives birth to children, she is called Eve, that is, life giver. However, later in the Torah, the story of Eve is put into a very individual narrative style, and she is trampled underfoot, transforming into the female figure who followed the devil and led Adam astray to eat the apple. You cannot see the word or name Eve mentioned even once in the Quran, and the book insistently describes this couple to us in its original as Adam and his spouse. Therefore, the story of expulsion from paradise in the Quran is small but significantly different in meaning from the Torah. In the Quran, there is no narrative like, the woman fed him the apple, he went astray. In the verse, it is explained that Adam and his spouse were deceived by the devil's game, ate the fruit of the tree, and wronged their own souls. In other words, no distinction is made between male and female. It even says in Surah Taha that after they ate from the forbidden tree, their shame became manifest to them, and Adam disobeyed his Lord. That is, the message is given that the complete human disobeyed his Lord without mentioning his spouse. Now, if there are those among you saying, why does it handle it as complete humanity without mentioning his spouse? Then one must look at the alternative meaning of that tree and its fruit. Now, if you think of the event literally as two people ate the apple of a forbidden apple tree in paradise and failed the test, the event will remain shallow again. But the tree for which a word carrying the meaning of shajarah, that is lineage or family tree, is used in the Arabic Quran, you will understand better that it was a forbidden lineage and that God expelled them and said, now descend to earth as enemies to one another. Because Adam and his spouse, that is humanity, established a relationship with that forbidden lineage. Even the devil says, according to the narrative, if you approach that tree, that is, that lineage, you will become like angels, you will become wise. Do you think all this narrative emerges because they ate a juicy red fruit, or because of the previously mentioned mixing of the human species with a different forbidden species? The decision is yours now. Now, if there are those asking, why is Adam referred to in the Quran as both a lineage and, according to some approaches, an individual and even the first caliph? It is not quite possible to give a clear answer to this due to the nature of the situation and Muslim conditions. Because the Quran is a book that does not go into much detail, and some words can carry very broad meanings. And more importantly, if you view the Quran not as a book sent down from the sky, whose sole source is divine, but as a part of the development of the history of religions, then a possibility also appears before us that it combines and recounts different stories from ancient Mesopotamian religions and narratives. As an example, it is stated that God taught Adam all the names, whereas the exact same narrative of this appears before us in a Sumerian text thousands of years before the Quran in the form of Enki gave sacred knowledge to Adapa. We created man from sounding clay, from mud molded into shape. The goddess Nin-Hersog needs the clay, the mud. With Enki's wisdom, she shapes the first human. Enki gave wisdom to Adapa, the son of man, but he did not give him eternal life. Behold, your Lord said to the angels, I will create a vicegerent on earth. The first knowledge sat on the throne of Eridu. Adapa, chosen by Enki, became the guide of the people. You can find more various similarities like these, and it is with this approach that researchers and authors like Samuel Kramer, Thorkild Jacobsen, and Jean Bottero claim that these narratives in the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran are actually based on Sumerian legends. This part of the matter is, of course, related to your belief. Whether you call the Quran a divine message or a book where past information is compiled, that part is up to you. But whatever you choose, it does not change the subject we are discussing today. Regardless of which religion or angle we approach the event from, the version where the word Adam, instead of the story where he was expelled from paradise because he ate an apple with his wife, and two people formed all the people in the world, fits right into the narrated story perfectly and gains logic. The version where a species was created specifically for the planet Earth. This species was called Son of Adam, that is, humankind. Then our story on this earth began. And etymologically, whether it is Arabic, Hebrew, Akkadian, Babylonian, or Sumerian, makes no difference. This sounds more correct to me. And the matter also falls into a certain framework both scientifically and logically. As I said, there is no debate here about right or wrong, lie or truth. Here there is either handling a narrative symbolically and not entering into its details, or there is the concern of approaching it etymologically and understanding the message in the books and history better with the meaning at the essence of the word. I hope this has been useful for those who love researching these topics. As I mentioned in the video, there are many videos on the channel that will develop your research or curiosity about these topics, and almost all of them are connected to each other. When you click on the description part of the videos and scroll down the screen, you will see links or playlists of some videos related to the video you are watching. You can continue your series from there. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.